I was working with a builder that I didn't like his moral principles and the way he went on, so I left him, and I was out of a job, and I'd said to my father, um, I think I might be able to get a job at the glass shop down the road. Oh, and he went ballistic. And of course, once he rubbished it, I pricked my ears up and thought, So I said to Bill one day I was down there, I said, any chance of a job? And he said, aren't you working? I said, no. He said, okay, all right. I can't pay you much. 30 bob a week or something it was. I said, okay. So I said, righto, I didn't know it was good or bad or indifferent at the time. Righto, so I started, and I was, 15 or something. And he would give me a clip behind the back of the ear if I had to tell me to do something twice. But he was a very good disciplinarian and a very good teacher for someone in the trade. You know, when he'd say measure twice and cut once, he meant that very, very sincerely. If I'd done something wrong, I had to work back in my time or through my lunch hour to redo it again and fix it up. He'd say, I'll supply the glass, you supply the labour, you stuffed it up, it's your fault, you fix it. Well, after 18 months I was the foreman. You know, I was 18 years of age, and I had a tradesman and an apprentice under me. He pushed me and pushed me hard. After a while, I found out that he did apologise, and he did thank you. But it's reading how he did it. For instance, I'd have a cut. I'd have a couple of stitches, and I couldn't work for a week. And I'm living at home on my own. You can't live home. I'm bored to tears. So I've got one hand, so I go to work. What are you doing here, you'd say. He was no bigger part. He was gruff and straight out. What are you doing here? Without a smile. And I said, I've got nothing to do at home, so I may as well come here and annoy you. And he said, well, you bloody will do that for sure, without a smile. And he said, all right then, well, you got one hand, sweep the floor up. Okay, so I was sweep the floor up. And this would go on for 2 or 3 days. And then he'd say, if you think I'm going to pay you for this, you've got another thing coming. And I said, did I ask for it? I didn't ask for it. I just wanted to be here, be somewhere, no good be at home. Okay. So he's come the Thursday payday. I say, if you give me the full pay, you're supposed to take, the workers' comp's supposed to pay it. You only get 3/4 of your wage, you see. He said, what I'll pay you now. When the workers' comp check comes through, you give it to me. I said, okay, suits me, because I'm picking up an extra 25%. Suits me. His way of saying thanks was he would never take the check. never take the check. Never took one. There was dozens of times that happened. One day he said to me, you're working for me because you haven't got the brains or the ability to work for yourself. What a beautiful stir that was. Actually, that's what I was thinking. I wanted to work for myself, but I really didn't know how or when or why or was it possible. So you really don't know that you can run a business until you've got your back to the wall and you're actually running a business. Not attempting to run it, but when you are running, when you decide to do it, and you get out there and do it, you think, whoops, hang on a minute. You've got to learn, and you learn it on the run.
When I started selling heralds, we got into quite a few battles, quite a few gangs. There were 2 rival news agencies in Geelong, Franks and Purdy's, and I was with Franks. There were definite boundaries. There were streets, there were corners, there were hotels that belonged to one or the other. And of course, boys used to cheat. They'd sneak into the other guys' pubs to try and sell a few papers or go across another guy's corner in the territory. And so we used to get into fights. And as you get older, you start realising, if I'm going to have a fist fight every time I have a difference of opinion with somebody, life's going to be pretty ridiculous. There's got to be a better way to come to a consensus than actually fighting.
Yeah.
And you learn that as you go along. But when you're young and you're a bit hot-headed, well, yeah, throwing a few fists about's a bit of fun, isn't it? But it doesn't really take you too far. I did enjoy working in the shop. I enjoyed people, serving people, making big sales. My mother used to look after the confectionery side of our business. We had a milk bar, soda fountain, confectionery, And she used to have big boxes of chocolates and that. Whenever I'd sell one of those, and I'd come in and tell Mum I just sold a big box of chocolates worth whatever it was, she used to be so thrilled, and that used to give me a lot of pride. So I used to try and make sure I picked the customer that was coming in that looked like the one that was going to buy the biggest box of chocolates sort of thing, and get in there and serve them.
My mother wanted me to stay on at Perth Modern School for the 4th year and 5th year to complete my leaving and go on to university. My father and my mother argued incessantly because my father thought that everyone should be earning their own way in their life from the earliest possible age. He thought 14, and I couldn't put up with the arguments. So in the second term, in August of that year, I settled the dispute by leaving. So I think it's the first time I made a decision totally independent of my mother. My first real big project for Pivot Group was acquiring the site and building a shopping centre, and it was a heavily subdivided site in Victoria Park, and at first the module that I was going to build could have been built on the East Victoria Park Primary School. I walked for days and days and days to find that. And then when I found that it was available, I decided I'd go to the government, and I went to the Education Department and said, I want to buy the East Victoria Park Primary School. Now, this is before the days of privatisation, when governments do trade with people to buy and sell government assets, and in those days they didn't. Not only that, they were not allowed to approach anybody about it. But when I spoke to the man who was in charge of education property, he said to me, "Thank God you've come." He said, "We've had 3 fatalities of kids running across Albany Highway, being killed or injured there." And he said, "It's a nightmare for us. We want to get it off the highway." Well, then I knew it was a possibility. The government were going to sell it and get a new school. They couldn't buy one. I found another site some distance away, but close enough to be in the same regional zone. The 4 acres that the school is on won't be enough. We need 10 acres. And so I'd won the tender, so I was ready to buy that. And then my partners were the AMP Society, who were funding all of this, and they funded me substantially to buy 31 houses, 2 roads and 6 laneways to make a 10-acre site so I could build the shopping centre. And when I got all of that, the government said, "Well, we've decided against selling you the school." And I picked up that letter on Good Friday, and it said we won't be going ahead with it. And so it meant that everything I'd worked for 2 years had gone to hell in a handbasket. And so I could see my future goals and plans going asunder. So I remember distinctly being round the side of the little house I lived in Applecross, in my pyjamas and my bare feet. I couldn't sleep, of course, and I'd been kicking myself for probably a day or so. It might have been Easter Sunday by now, and I suddenly resolved I was not going to go broke, and I kicked a hole in the fence, the corrugated asbestos fence that ran between me and the neighbours. And I don't think you could have broken it with a hammer, but I put my foot right through it. And it wasn't a soft piece. I didn't hurt my foot. Should have broken my foot. But the sense of my adrenaline, my emotion was so high that I resolved there and then, well, I refuse to go broke. I will not go broke. I went and saw the politicians I had to. I went and saw the Education Department. I went and saw the bloke who wrote the letter. And I must have shown a determination that I wasn't going to be stopped, because things started to flow again.